This is a presentation as we've reached the end of phase 1 of the NHS Dorset CCG Clinical Services Review, where we've completed an overview and review of the system. We've analysed and designed some proposed models. The decisions to be made by the governing body today are: does the governing body agree with the out of acute hospital approach? Secondly, does the governing body agree with the acute hospital models of care and its site-specific options? 3, does the governing body approve the proposal to move to consultation? Fourthly, does the governing body approve the delegation of authority to the chair and the accountable officer to make minor amendments to the consultation proposal to address the external assurance feedback? And 5, does the governing body approve the delegation of authority to the control and assurance group to sign off the consultation document? Those questions will be asked at the end of the presentation. So why do we need to change Dorset's health system? There are 5 main compelling reasons to go forward with this. And a lot of information has been produced over the past 6 to 9 months detailing the reasons why. Firstly, we have a growing elderly population. We know that our population as a whole is going to grow by about 6% from the current figure of around 750,000 in Dorset to over 800,000. We know that approximately 30% of this increase will take place in the over 70 age group, and this means that we have an increased health need as older people have more health needs such as chronic heart complaints, chronic lung complaints, dementia and so on. So there will be a greater need for our services, and we need to be able to provide those safely and equitably across Dorset. Secondly, we have variable quality in out-of-hospital care, and patients sometimes report difficulty in accessing care. We know that there are differences in the amount of extended hours that are provided by GPs, both in the working week and also at weekends. Thirdly, we have some variable quality in acute hospital-based care, particularly for more specialist services, with some national quality standards not being met, and we need to address this. Fourthly, we have some shortage of some healthcare staff, and that includes both primary and secondary care provision. Sometimes it's difficult to ensure we have enough staff available, particularly on a 24 hours a day basis, and we need to address that. And fifthly, we have a financial challenge with average yearly demand for services outstripping income received. And we know that we will have a funding gap of somewhere between 167 and 200 million pounds by 2021, and this gap will continue to grow, so we need to address the financial challenge. Our vision for Dorset is an integrated and local health system where possible, safe and sustainable. Our care will be centred around the patient, you see in the middle of the diagram, with patients' care central to all we do. We want to provide care close to home, within patients' homes where at all possible, looking at prevention and early targeting, by providing integrated care with multidisciplinary teams, ensuring that we join up services between GP practices and other primary care and community health services, ensuring that we can provide care around the patient, and sometimes this might mean that they're in community hubs of treatment, which I'll explain later. We need to make sure we meet national standards, and we need to make sure that our acute hospital system is also integral to the process, and we will deliver 24-hour care where this is required. There are a number of key enablers which will need to be discussed, such as IT systems, effective contracts, regulation and tariffs, and patient education and sharing of information. And these are some of the benefits that we expect for our local people by delivering the out of acute and acute hospital models of care. Primarily, we want to deliver quality of care for all. We need care, as I've said, centred around patients, meeting both physical and mental health needs, and improved outcomes in both morbidity and mortality. We want to save more lives by having 24/7 consultant on-site led care where appropriate, and develop centres of excellence. We want to have the right care in the right place at the right time with better communication and ensure that patients have a positive experience of care. We need to provide seamless integrated care and avoid duplication, and most importantly meet national key quality standards for some specialist services. We want to reduce length of stay in hospital, reduce admissions where we can, and have an increased focus on prevention, which will improve health for years to come. We want to improve access of care for all, again, as I've said, by delivering care closer to home for more people, ensuring that services are available 7 days a week, and for some services that will mean 24 hours a day care, with easier access to some specialist and hyperacute services and more services being developed in the community. We have to have sustainability of our services and value for money. We need to close the financial gap, and we will do this by looking at new models of care, by cost avoidance across the health economy, and by improving productivity in-house through all sectors of the health economy. In terms of workforce, we want to have a sustainable workforce with availability 24/7 where appropriate. We want Dorset to be a great place to come and work. We want to attract high quality staff and retain those high quality staff in Dorset. We want a greater focus on multidisciplinary working, improved efficiency of working practices, and make sure that we have sufficient volumes of care per consultant to maintain skills and expertise. This needs to be deliverable, and we need a solution that will be implemented within 5 years and will go forward after this. We want service models to be supported by national best practice and support from national bodies. And we also want to improve opportunities for training, research, and to be able to adopt new technologies and treatments that are currently not available in Dorset. So this is the process for delivering the review. We are now completing stage 1, and we will be moving forward to formal consultation from the end of August onwards, with final CCG decision making taking place in early 2016, and then from spring 2016 onwards, implementation of any changes. Aligned with this is going to be a mental health care review, and this is taking place currently and will feed into the final CSR process. It's a really important complementary programme of work, and some work around this has already taken place, as I'll describe, through the clinical services review so far. The programme for this will be to look at formal public consultation from early 2016, with decision making later on in the year in 2016 and implementation from 2017 onwards. So the process so far has involved many local clinicians. Around 300 have been involved to date from October 2014 through to May 2015. And they engaged in a series of what we called working groups, clinical working groups, where we started off looking at what patients' needs were, how currently services were being provided, looking then at best practice, national and international models, looking at what good would look like, then thinking about what models of care both in and out of acute hospitals could best meet patients' needs, and then thinking about possible options for organising delivery both in and out of acute hospitals. And finally came up with a series of preferred options for the delivery of services, which would then go forward for consultation. Discussions have taken place through 4 key service areas: care for people with long-term conditions and the frail elderly, maternity and paediatrics, planned and specialist services, and urgent and emergency care, with mental health running through as a theme through all the clinical working groups at every stage. So, as I've described, we've engaged widely with Dorset's clinicians. These clinicians have come from primary care, from secondary care, they have been nurses, allied health professionals, paramedics, and also we've engaged with local authorities as part of the process. But in addition to this, there are 4 key other groups of people that we've engaged with. First of all, and very importantly, public patients and carers, with many public information events, as you see, looking at responses from the Big Ask, which were a series of 29,000 survey responses, and information to 1,400 Health Information Network members. We've met at locality level with GPs, we've met at cluster level with the groups of GPs and localities coming together to discuss each of the and evaluate each of the outputs that have come from the clinical working group, and those have been fed back into the process at each step of the way. Practice visits have taken place, and there have been development workshops and membership events. In terms of NHS staff, there have been meetings and briefings with Dorset CCG, our acute and community health trusts, the ambulance services and mental health services. And then other stakeholders, NHS England, Health and Wellbeing Boards, MPs and other CCGs who border our borders, counsellors, voluntary organisations and so on. And through this process, as I've said, we've discussed mental health and physical health together. So our ambition is to transform Dorset's out of acute hospital service provision. In terms of primary care, we would like to move from some variation in performance and 5 to 7 day services to some consistent quality and 7-day services. At the moment, we have some multiple overlapping services and limited access to out-of-hours services, and we want to move to single point of access and access to a range of professionals. We need to integrate care so that we provide integrated locality teams, providing seamless services to patients and move away from the fragmentation that is there presently. In terms of planning care closer to home, we want to avoid patients having to travel long distances, and we want to be able to provide care where we can at scale in the community. We want to try and keep people at home and provide home-based support services with improved use of technology to recover independence. And in terms of the workforce for the future, we want clinical staff not to be spending time on tasks that they don't need to do. We need them to be delivering highly skilled and complex procedures to deliver physical and mental health in the community, using skills to the top of their licence and with enhanced IT support. So the proposal is to develop hubs to support the delivery of services at scale. This map shows the population of Dorset roughly divided into East and West Dorset, and this is to reflect the geography, with the West being very largely rural and the East being very urban and more densely populated. We would look to develop between 5 and 7 local hubs based possibly on existing community or acute hospital sites, with GPs working as part of a network in a hub and spoke model in the west of the county. In the east, we would look to the development of perhaps 2 large hubs, with 1 at the site of the major planned care hospital and 1 potentially at a community hospital site, but with larger GP practices, very much networking and providing urgent care, outpatients and primary care at scale. This is an example of what a hub might look like. We would expect the hub to provide for a catchment population of somewhere between 60 and 120,000 people at a large hub. There would be the potential to deliver primary care services from those hubs to a catchment population of around 30 to 40,000 at a larger hub. And all hubs will require multi-use of rooms and utilisation for around 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, and will include pharmacy, GP services, potentially community health services, diagnostics, perhaps dentistry and children's services. Larger hubs could also include step-up and step-down beds. In terms of acute hospital services provision, local clinicians have defined different types of acute hospitals, which were based very much on models informed by the Sir Bruce Keogh review for urgent and emergency care. And there are 3 main acute hospital service types, which are centres of excellence that they would like to see provided for the people of Dorset. And they determined how this could be delivered in Dorset. So the first type of hospital is a major planned care hospital with an urgent care centre as part of an A&E network in Dorset, delivering primarily elective care, and I'll show you later. Then there would be a major emergency hospital with full A&E services. And thirdly, a planned care and emergency hospital with A&E services, if you like, a hybrid of the other models. Two potential site-specific options have been identified by clinicians for delivering the model of care for the acute hospital services. And these show two options, option A and option B. It was decided that because of the rurality and geography of the West, that we needed to provide the planned care and emergency hospital with the A&E services on the current Dorset County Hospital site. And this is why you see that this is the same in both option A and option B. And then the major emergency hospital with A&E services could be sited either at Poole or at the Royal Bournemouth site, and the major planned care hospital with urgent care centre could be, again, at either site, Royal Bournemouth or the Poole site. And this diagram reflects the two types, the two options for discussion. So now I want to describe at very top level what the major planned care hospital summary might look like, what the services might look like in that type of hospital. In terms of urgent and emergency care, this would look like a 24/7 urgent care centre as part of a Dorset network, which would be GP-led but with consultant input. And we would anticipate that around 80% of current activity would still continue to be delivered on this site. There would be some subacute medical admissions with rehabilitation beds, but the main throughput of work would be in the planned and specialist field with high volume, low complexity planned and day case surgery. There would need to be an enhanced planned recovery unit to enable care for those who would need it, who became unexpectedly ill after operation, with planned medical interventions in the admissions, possibly with chemotherapy, and then with outpatients and diagnostics. In terms of maternity care and paediatrics, we would be providing antenatal and postnatal care with children's therapies and outpatients. And long-term conditions in the frail elderly population would have an integrated frailty service on that site with primary and community care services on site, step-up and step-down beds with mental health care services but not inpatient beds. You will see that the long-term conditions and frail older service runs through all of the different sites. In terms of the major emergency hospital summary, this hospital would look like a hospital that had 24 hours a day consultant-delivered A&E with trauma, would have 24 hours a day delivery of services for hyperacute cardiac and stroke service, with consultant-delivered emergency surgery 24 hours a day, acute medical admissions, and a 24-hour-a-day gastrointestinal bleed rota. There would be level 3 critical care, some high complex but low volume planned care for difficult operations, 24 hours a day interventional radiology with outpatients and diagnostics. In terms of maternity and paediatric care, there would be a high risk obstetric unit with 24 hours a day consultant presence for maternity with an alongside midwifery-led unit for low risk care. Inpatient consultant delivered paediatrics would be delivered 24 hours a day with a neonatal intensive care level 2. Long-term conditions, as I've said, would remain as it does in the other sites with an integrated frailty service, mental health care services but not inpatient beds, and primary and community care services on site. We don't have this sort of hospital at present in Dorset. In terms of planned care and emergency hospitals, so the site that we envisage for Dorset County Hospital, this would look for urgent and emergency care like this. It would have a 24-hour open A&E service with 14 hours per day, 7 days a week, consultant presence. There would be hyper-acute cardiac care Monday to Friday, approximately 8 hours a day as part of the Dorset network. And there would be non-interventional cardiac care, perhaps 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, with 7-day-a-week working, and again as part of a network. There would be a hyperacute stroke service for 14 hours a day, and again networked to the major emergency centre for cover after these hours, with stroke unit and stroke rehabilitation, repatriation back from an acute site as soon as possible, and emergency surgery planned for around 14 hours a day, 7 days a week, also with networking to the acute hospital. There would be acute medical admissions and a level 3 critical care unit. there would be high volume, low complexity and planned day case surgery with interventional radiology cover during the working week, again networked to the main site with outpatients and diagnostics. In terms of maternity and paediatric care, we would envisage a 24-hour consultant-led unit with an increase to approximately 60 hours per week of consultant cover on labour ward, and that would leave around 108 hours on call at night, and that might be either resident at home or within 30 minutes of the hospital. There would be an alongside midwifery-led unit to support low-risk births, appropriate neonatal care, and with the potential to develop a possible paediatric assessment unit, perhaps 16 hours a day with full consultant presence. And again, in terms of long-term conditions in frail elderly, the same integrated frailty service, primary and community care on site, and mental health care services, but not inpatient beds. We would expect that around 90 to 95% of current activity that exists at Dorset County would continue to be delivered at that site. Many services will be provided as a network. This work is highly complex. The detail is still being worked on for some specialities. All of these are under discussion and we will go to consultation. As part of the discussions, all of the groups that we met with, including the clinicians and the patient and public groups that were engaged, looked at a series of full evaluation criteria for each hospital. This is a busy slide, and I'm not going to read all of it, but basically it describes 6 areas which are weighted equally and considered equally important in terms of evaluation. And the first one is quality of care with clinical effectiveness, patient care experience and safety. Secondly, access to care for all. Thirdly, affordability and value for money. Fourthly, the workforce, the scale of impact, sustainability and any loss of Dorset workforce. Fifthly, deliverability within the timescales. And sixth, the research and education elements. Clinicians considered a large number of options for how the services could be organised, and the results of the analysis and assessment against those evaluation criteria that I've described, and went from a very long list of around 21 generic potential options down to a medium list, a short list, and then the final selection of the potential options, as I've given you, those 2 site-specific options which will be put forward for public consultation. So, what will we be consulting on? First of all, the need for change and why change is required, and the acceptance that status quo is neither sustainable nor desirable, and our vision for healthcare in Dorset with an agreement with the CCG's overarching vision. We will look at transforming our out-of-hospital acute provision to provide high quality, safe and sustainable care, and our acute hospitals to provide the same high quality, safe and sustainable care. And we will be looking at implementation and specific issues that will arise as a result of the consultation, such as public transport routes, sequencing of new and old services. The proposed timetable, therefore, as I've said, is the decision made at the Governing Body on the 20th of May. Following this, there will be a period between June and August 2015 where there will be external assurance and engagement with NHS England, the Wessex Clinical Senate, the Joint Health and Overview Scrutiny Committee and Monitor. From August to November, there will be public consultation, and in December an independent report with consultation findings as a result of that consultation. In February 2016, an updated business case will be presented, and in March 2016, the Governing Body decision-making process will take place.